Absolutely. I think you need to think about everyone and the process they're going to take to climb the leadership ladder. And I think it looks a little bit different for every issue and every organization. But the true success of building a team of people is working to ensure that you're building everybody's role and leadership responsibility within your organization. And to have that kind of set up ahead of time is one of the best practices that I would offer. In the campaign that I'm currently running, we kind of have the first 10 steps that we would want a volunteer to take. So day one might be as simple as they're out there with us helping to get postcards filled out. And perhaps day two, they're actually one of the people that's training a new person on how to collect postcards. And again, I think the steps really do vary, but having that really clearly laid out, and then having it laid out only to the extent that there's a next logical step for people to take, but not too laid out that you're not really listening to volunteers and listening to what their interest area is. The key is increasing responsibility and at the same time really being responsive to where their set of interests lie, so that you're kind of walking them up a leadership ladder that takes them to a place where they're going to give the kind of contribution to your cause, your organization that you're looking for. And then really keeping the lines of communication open between organizers and volunteers. A debrief isn't something, for instance, that just happens when a person comes in the first time. It really should happen consistently. It should happen not only with volunteers, with staff, across all the folks that are a part of an organization. And as long as those lines of communication are open, you're always communicating where the need is within a campaign for, additional leadership, and then also where that particular person's interests lie. This is the key thing, how do we keep people motivated over what is often an extended period of time in any given organization or issue? I think sometimes we make this more complex than it actually needs to be. People are probably motivated most of all by how much they enjoyed the experience. And so I think one of the best ways to keep volunteers motivated is by really creating a team atmosphere and environment amongst the people that you're working with. If people enjoy the people they're working with, if they're having a good time, they feel like they're really building relationships, that's probably the biggest incentive for somebody to come back another time and really get increasingly involved in whatever it is you're recruiting an individual to do. So creating the right kind of climate and feel, I think, is definitely key. And then really having goals for the organization and for your volunteers. People want to see that there's some kind of forward progress from all the work that they're doing. And if there isn't kind of an eye set on what those goals are, it can start to feel like there's no reason to come in and do it anymore, if there's no end in sight. And so even though many of the issues we work on are very long-term types of things, I think it's important to set intermediary goals so that there's something to kind of rally people around and get them excited about. And then I think the final thing when it comes to keeping people motivated is again talking to them and listening to them and really understanding individual by individual what it is that motivates them to be a part of this, and recognizing that those are very different things for different people. On political campaigns, some people are really motivated by getting a certain person elected, and you just got to keep reminding them of what it's going to be like if your candidate gets elected. But for other people, really the motivation is the opportunity to talk with their community and to talk with, getting to know new people and really building relationships. And so by knowing that as an organizer, you can really be the most effective in maintaining high levels of motivation. I think probably some of the best asks for volunteers that I've ever seen are really getting unusual suspects to agree to volunteer and using their appeal to get other people to volunteer. I've seen it on college campuses where you get a professor or you get an administrator to say that they'd like to come out and volunteer, and it's kind of their presence where a student walking by is like, wow, if that person's interested, I would love to. And it becomes a little bit gimmicky, but it's amazing the kind of groundswell that comes from that type of thing. I think not tricking people into volunteering, but really getting a group of people together for all sorts of purposes, whether it's to discuss, an interesting topic, or whether it's to go and see a film, and then really working off of the enthusiasm that's created by that event to get people to kind of go and do the next thing. So recently the film The Inconvenient Truth has been screened all over the place, and I took a group of volunteers who didn't even know they were volunteers yet to go see that movie. So we went and we saw the movie, and we went out to lunch afterwards, because I think a social activity is really key. Lunch, we're talking about the film and how it impacts our lives, and people kind of just felt that urge that they wanted to do something. And as it turned out, there were later screenings of An Inconvenient Truth where we really wanted to sign up volunteers. And so I got that initial group to come that afternoon, because I drew off of their enthusiasm about the topic. We went out to lunch, we built relationships. So I think to get out of, sometimes your traditional framework of, well, I need to go and give an announcement and have people raise their hands if they want to volunteer, or I have to stand on a street corner or whatever. Just thinking about the ways in which relationship building can, and doing fun activities together can directly lead into recruiting volunteers. This is a topic that I think about all the time. The progressive movement has a lot on its plate, and it doesn't just have a lot on its plate today. It's always going to have a lot on its plate. And this means that every campaign opportunity we have should, in large part, be about recruitment and building our movement, so that we have the grassroots power to not only win today and win tomorrow, but to win forever. Recruitment is the way in which we build our movement. It's how we get fresh ideas into our movement. It's how we develop the next great leader that's going to be that visionary that we need to kind of take the next steps in policy, or, in social movements, or whatever the case may be. So I think that in the way that we look at every single campaign, we almost need to think of a goal of recruitment alongside whatever the ultimate goal of the campaign is. Because without that, we're creating a dead end for ourselves as progressives. And I think we can look at the progressive movement right now, and we can see all types of gaps that exist in terms of leadership, in terms of having diverse enough leadership, in terms of having leadership that extends across all generations, and that really conscientious, focused recruitment efforts in all of our campaigns can really start to fill a lot of those holes, fill in those gaps, and hopefully, most importantly, ensure that we're in a position to be successful, and not to just always be out there fighting uphill battles as progressives, but to be out there winning important victories for progressives.